Hey guys, this is Jeff from Hubie's Garage, and just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about today's project. We're going to be working on my street-driven 55 Chevy. It's glare. I know the glare is pretty bad. I'm kind of trying out a new handheld here. Anyway, going to be working on my street 55, my Bel Air two-door sedan. I've had this car since I was 15 years old, and had some issues along the way. Life gets in the way. Just dealing with a lot of stuff with the car basically getting put on the back burner. Family first, and cars are, whenever you have the time. Basically, the car got parked at some point because it had worn out leaf springs, and you go over just a regular dip in the road and the car would bottom out. I did a lot of drag racing with the car in the early days. Like I say, I bought it when I was 15. And I think right after high school, my dad and I went through and did a frame-on restoration on the car. Swapped an L79 327 into it. Put a switch pitch turbo 400 into it. And I was literally putting parts on the car, trim pieces on the car on the trailer the night before we left for Bakersfield to run at Famoso. Anyway, so did a lot of racing with the car. The car kind of got neglected through the racing years because you'd run into issues where you need to fix something between rounds, and you didn't have your shop out there at the track, so you did the best you could, and some of that stuff didn't really get fixed along the way. But so that was one of the items we never did. We never did bushings on the car, never did leaf springs. So while my son had the garage with his Nova in the garage, I came home from work and found my 55 pushed out in front of the garage and his in the garage. Typical story. I did a story like that to my dad with his 55 when I was about my son's age. So I can't get mad at him for that, but it sat outside for a couple years here, and I never got to put the leaf springs in. So while he was working on his Nova in here, I thought, hey, I'm going to go to Classic Industries, get some 2-inch drop leaf springs, put some leaf springs in the car, put some bushings in the car, get some polygraphite bushings, and just start. Well, I started on the project before I had the channel. So basically, you're going to see me putting it back together. It wasn't too tough to take it apart. There's a million ways to skin a cat, and there's different ways to do these leaf springs, whether you just take them and put the leaf springs in the car and then put the rear end in afterwards, or bolt the rear end up to the leaf springs and then raise it up and then attach the back end to the shackles, that kind of stuff. We'll see what happens as we go. I've done them both ways, and not much to show from the beginning because it wasn't filmed, so I apologize for that, but we will pick it up from getting the leaf springs and putting them back in the car. The car does have the leaf springs attached at the front eye bolts. The front bushings were already installed in these leaf springs when I got them from Classic Industries. And so you'll see basically the original 10-bolt rear end that still has the 488 posi in it, the original rear end out of the car. We did a lot of work to it back in the day, put some Richmond gears in it. I got some wheel studs that are lengthened. It helps with the weld wheels that are on the car. And it also has a billet steel main cap that holds the carrier in. It's pinned, and pretty strong rear end. I think a lot of people expect these things to fail, but with an automatic car that doesn't really have a real good 60-foot time, it's been a great rear end. I haven't had any problems with it. So anyway, let's get out there and get at it.
proper tool.
Yeah, I bet it is, Al. You know, men, when we want a job done right and we want it done quick, what do we need?
All right, guys, it's the next day, and as you could see last night, I was really struggling with that thing, trying to get that thing up in there. I think the toughest part was just the heavy Lakewood slapper bars and trying to get those in there. And the car wasn't really jacked up real high in the air, wasn't on a lift or anything like that, so just getting my arm in there to articulate getting the U-bolt nuts on and whatnot. Couldn't really hang the springs by themselves and then slide the rear axle in there at a 90 and then spin it up into the leaf springs, because I still had the brake line attached and still had the emergency brake cables attached. So pretty much had to just bolt it to the leaf springs and then attach the front eyelets and then jack it up and bring it up to the shackles, which is what we're doing right now. I just want to show you the kit that I'm using. I'm using an Energy suspension. It's a polygraphite kit. These are the part numbers. There's two of them for the Tri-5s. You can see the G on the end on both of them. The G, I'm told from Energy Suspension, is graphite. So they are urethane bushings with graphite in them to help quiet them down from the earlier just urethane only bushings. But there's two kits. The 55 has one that's specific to them only because it has the shorter bushings, like you see here. And then in 56 they went to a wider mount where it attaches to the frame. Basically that's a 3 1/4 inch, and you can see here's a shackle here. The 55 would just have a straight plate with two 2.5 inch bolts, but this one was widened at the point where it attaches to the frame, and that one's 3 1/4. They also come with some silicone in the kits, 2 little tubes. I just use the silicone grease. They use it specifically for the brakes, but it also works great for the suspension bushings in this case. So that's pretty much about it. Let's go ahead and get started, and we'll put the bushings in the car. All right. So I didn't get the old bushings out. Luckily, these are still real pliable. Just use the standard flat-bladed screwdriver. Still got a lot of chunks of rubber under here from all the years of burnouts. It's all falling in my face. But battle signs of better times. All right, so I'm gonna do something that they normally tell you. They normally tell you just to use sandpaper on the cups here, on the spring mounts, but I'm going to do something a little different. Got some new stones here for my wheel cylinder hone. Put a little bit of oil on it. A little squirt in there. And we'll go ahead and just knock some of the crud out of this thing. Probably just a little easier to do this than a rolled up piece of sandpaper that's not going to hit everything. Alright. Probably have to guide it because it's a pretty bad angle, but whoop, I was afraid of that. Looks like that'll make the blooper reel. right, so just basically something to knock the rubber, the crud, the burrs, anything out of there that might be something that might chew up the bushings. So we'll go ahead and get these all lubed up. They've already been wire wheeled, so checked out. They're basically, you got a knurl on the shank of the bolt that slides into the bracket, and one of mine was bent, and I actually just put it on the on the vise and had to spread it out. So I put it on the outside of the vise and then back the vise out, and that actually moved it. So got it all lined up again. It's still in good shape. It's not a problem. Not worried about it, but grab a couple of new bushings here. This one, do a little bit of the same silicone goop in here too. Oh, whoops. Except, I got to wipe all the WD-40 out of there. Get this all nice and cleaned out. All right. That's good. Get the goop. Dabble doer. Maybe a little more is better. Who knows? All right. So that's in there. Put a little bit on the bushing. Let's start with the back first. Okay, that one slid in pretty nice, all things considering. I think probably running that brake hone or the wheel cylinder hone was probably a good idea. Just didn't take too much off, but just enough to get rid of all the crud and the burrs. Okay. All right, that one's in. All right, now for the shackle, the hump always goes up, and on this side, I ended up having to loosen up the filler neck because the filler neck is definitely in the way. So had to kind of push that aside, and I'll probably have to flip down in here. Get a better angle. All right. Oh yeah, all that drag strip boogers falling right on my face. Well, let's see if I can somehow. All right, I know you came out of here. All right, well, I hate doing this, but it is what it is. Pull the filler neck out. And this is the fun part. Because there's not a lot of leverage to get this thing in here. Especially on the other side. All right. All right, it's all nice and flush. All right, so now we'll work on using the floor jack and getting the rear eyelet of the leaf spring up and seeing if we can get it into the other end of that shackle. But again, the hump is up, and that's basically where it hangs. So, all right, let's get back on these shackles. So, all right, so the key to this, at least in my mind, is to pull the shackle back all the way up against the frame so it's not completely sticking through the mount, and keep the U-bolts as loose as possible so you can swing the leaf spring out over the threads on the lower shackle bolt. So let's see if we can see this here. All right. Yeah, it's gonna fit out nice. You see, I already got the bushing already on. It's just easier to manage it that way versus having the bushing on the leaf spring itself. Okay, that's it, it's on. So now what we'll do is we'll get the other bushing, put some lube on it. Get that ready to go. And let's see how, kind of figured this was going to happen. All right. Let's see if I can try to center this just by looking at it, because the floor jack definitely moves it around a little bit, takes it out of center. Oh. Well, let's see. But the only thing I can do, let me try one thing here. All right, so our shackle bracket fits back on. Get the castle nuts started. And that's it. A little light on the subject. So that's about it. Of course, I'll torque everything down at the end, including the U-bolts. But best thing for me to do here with this was, at least on the lower shackle where the spring attaches, was to put the actual bushing on the shackle itself and then push the shackle all the way up against the frame. So it just gives you the most amount of room to be able to pull that spring to the outside. Having the U-bolts and everything just kind of loosey-goosey allows you to be able to pull it up past those threads and then slide it back onto the shackle. And then the only thing that was a little bit touchy was just having to hammer the last remaining bushing on with a socket. So that's it for now. I'll wrap it up with getting out my torque wrench, and if I had some wheels, I'd set it on the ground, but apparently all of us with all these YouTube jobs or YouTube garages, I think our mantra ought to be waiting on parts, because that's what I'm doing. I'm waiting on tires. My tires have not come in. They're not due to come in until May. So I may put some of my rally wheels on this thing just so I could drive it and see how everything works with it. So, all right, let's get it buttoned up. All right, pretty much done. I just gotta torque everything down. So I'm going to get on that. I'm going to do the front eye bolts, the U-bolts, and then the rear shackles. So all right, so let's just take a quick peek under here. Shackles are all done. The leaf springs, basically they're 2-inch drop leaf springs. They are from Classic Industries, and these are the original 4-leaf Eaton springs. So that's it right there. But got the shocks back in, drive shaft's hooked up, brake line is attached. I think the toughest thing about all this was the J-bolts on these Lakewood slapper bars. I think at some point this car is going to get a Ford 9, and it will get some Caltrax probably to go with it. But that's for a later time. Right now the big concern with this one is get it working, get it running, get it back on the road. It wasn't real super easy, as you saw in a little bit of the video, but hey, at least I wasn't wrestling one of these suckers in there, because these are the big ones. These are the early Pontiac Olds rear ends. This one right here is out of a 59 Olds, and this one right here is out of a 57 Olds. So drum to drum on these is the same on a Tri-5, but unless it's a 57 Pontiac, you're going to be moving the perches. So just really glad I wasn't wrestling one of those in, because I'm pretty broken as it is, and this would have been me and my son doing this. So alrighty, well, thanks for joining along on this, for being patient. If you got any questions, throw it in the comments. If you have any concerns, something that you saw, something that could be done better, I'm here to learn too. Hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.